let some more people join in before we get started. Thanks for joining.
Yay. So excited to be here, everyone.
Yeah.
Is it Tuesday? Yeah, it's Tuesday.
Oh, you know what? It's actually more than just Tuesday, and it's more than just Return to Awesome Day. Today is actually a special holiday, but I'll share that when we get started.
Oh, okay. Now I want to know.
Oh,
I guess I'll stay on.
Keeping us in suspense.
I'm going to stay on the call so I can find out.
Yeah.
I can't wait. The suspense is killing me.
Yeah.
Yeah. If anybody wants to drop into the chat, what special holiday you think it is today? We'll see if somebody guesses it right.
Right.
Molly, I can see you Googling.
Yeah.
I promise.
Not the last day of summer, because we still got a little ways for that.
We only have 3.5 more days until it's Labor Day weekend day. That's what I think of.
By the way, I just realized that daylight savings time doesn't end until November, I think.
Really?
Yeah. So I didn't realize that. So
we're gonna have some long summer nights continuing through October.
Yes, we are.
So we can get started if you want, David. What do you think?
It sounds like a great idea. Let's do it. Shall I kick it off then?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, listen. Hey, thanks everybody. For those of you who don't know, I'm Dave Denny. I'm the founder and CEO of Insidesource, and I really just want to thank everybody for joining us today. Obviously, we've all got super busy schedules right now, which is a great thing for our industry. And I'm personally excited to just see everybody here today, or get a chance to chat with you. And I'd also like to make sure we invite you to our San Francisco showroom. Interestingly enough, we did this. We just redid our showroom before the pandemic, and I think a lot of the concepts we're going to be talking about today are really already kind of embedded into that showroom. As centerpieces for that showroom is the OFS Abea product, and it's really become a centerpiece for collaboration and for our work teams to really collaborate in a variety of work settings for their best work. So a large part of our focus right now, you guys, is really addressing the synergies that's created between workstations, formal meeting areas, and collaboration zone within the workplace. And the intersections between these work points is really, it's top of mind for our clients and for us as well. So it's a big part of our focus, and creating the thread between culture, community, and workplace is really what we're doing on a daily basis right now. I would also really like to invite you guys to engage with Kelly Naylor, who's our creative strategy director, and Reagan Donahue, our thought-providing and talented workplace strategist, to talk further about some of these concepts we'll be talking about today and help guide you on your path moving forward. So thanks very much. Thanks for attending, you guys. And I'm going now to turn it over to Doug Shapiro and Molly Pryor with OFS for their personal introductions. Really, our intention today, you guys, it's really to inspire you and your employees, and not just return to office, but return to awesome. So thanks a lot.
Awesome. Thank you, Dave. And thank you to the Insidesource team for championing these critical conversations around workplace. It's kind of a controversial topic these days, so I hope we can add some clarity to this subject. We're trying to help you create that return to awesome. I'm going to introduce myself and just kind of pass it around so that you get a sense of who we are. I'm Doug Shapiro, Head of Research and Insights at OFS. I also host a podcast called Imagine a Place. Go ahead, Reagan. Oh, Reagan might have froze. All right, Molly, you want to jump in?
Yeah. Hey, I am Molly Pryor. And
did I freeze?
Yes.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Reagan.
Oh, okay. Am I okay? I am Reagan Donahue, and I am a strategic partner with Insidesource. And I just have to say, by the way, it's so exciting to be a part of this and just to see like the attention to detail and the design that comes through working with you two companies. And like, I mean, the fact that we have our matching shirts and these backgrounds and everything's so cute. But I am a workforce strategist. I love to immerse myself into companies. Specifically, the last 4 or 5 years, I've been more of a tech novice and engaged with a lot of the larger technology companies in their culture, change management, and return to awesome. And Molly.
Yeah. Hey guys, I am Molly Preer, and I am the Director of Marketing for OFS, and I work on all of the product development for the products that we produce. So always trying to think about how we can create products that truly solve problems and aren't just products to be products. And so I love these rich conversations that we're having right now. It's just an exciting time for our industry. And a big thank you to Insidesource for bringing us into this conversation to really talk deeply about some of these super important topics. So excited for today's conversation, and excited to be with Reagan and Doug here to unfold some of these awesome shifts and critical shifts that are taking place.
Awesome. Thanks, Molly. So, hey, drop questions in the chat box as we go. I'll keep an eye on it. And also, this is being recorded. So if you tune out or you miss some of it, no big deal. We'll publish that recording for you guys. So yeah, today is not just Return to Awesome Day. Today is actually National Trail Mix Day. I swear. Okay, I'm not making this up. You can Google that. And you know what?
Oh,
I kind of like that. I kind of like that it's Trail Mix Day because,
I'm not mad at that.
so when you think about it, so many offices have been designed for a big bag of peanuts, right? But the reality is, look at your workforce. We're dried cranberries, we're raisins, we're peanuts, right? We're sunflower seeds. And if you're lucky, you've got some chocolate chips in there too. In my house, within days, we buy a bag of trail mix. All of a sudden, all the chocolate's missing, right? And then we're just left with a bag of raisins. But I do think that we're starting to get a hold of, starting to understand the makeup of the word people, what it means. And that's one of the things that kind of we'll get into in this Return to Awesome webinar. I want to start off getting into culture, though. I want to talk about culture because, as I think about what has changed or what changes in front of us and the opportunity to build something better when it comes to workplace and an understanding of workplace culture, before I even look forward, I kind of want to look back and understand, well, what wasn't working before? Because if we're experiencing a shift in culture, if it happens and then we repeat all the same mistakes we made in the past, we're kind of left off no better than we were. And so the question that I asked was, well, if a lot of people found their groove, or a lot of workplaces found areas for improvement, why didn't we see that beforehand? Why didn't we recognize the need to shift our workplace cultures, pre-pandemic, when we had all these great tools like the ability to connect remotely and to have the sort of work flexibility that we're seeing now? And so that's a question I want to explore. I don't know, Reagan, if you have any thoughts around what's shifting, or maybe what was missing in workplace culture in the past.
So I think the biggest thing, this is truly human nature, is adversity to change. And we are survivors by trade, is who we are. We have been hardwired into our brains, like our reptilian, our gut instincts tell us to not go after the unknown, because I got to tie back to the caveman days, Doug. I got to do it. In the caveman days, if you ate a berry and it was poisonous, you would die, right? But if you ate a berry and it was delicious, you would live. So would you go around trying a bunch of berries, or would you be very apprehensive and say, well, I've tried these couple berries and it works just fine, so I'm going to just eat these berries? So unfortunately, that becomes a very bland diet. You become stuck with the same, things over and over again. And there's all this opportunity out there that you're missing out on. And another way I kind of think of it is, when you look down a dark cave, your first instinct is to say, that's danger, don't go in there. And I always like to say, what if that's a diamond mine? And so it's all about, and pressure makes diamonds. So let's put a little more pressure towards people to push ourselves a little bit further out of our comfort zone, to explore a little bit more. And there's actually something that we can invoke. This didn't happen in the past as much because we had more of a fear-based system with how we tracked people. It was all about, well, if you don't hit your productivity X, Y, and Z, or if you're not in the office at these times, you will get a demerit. Your KPIs aren't going to be in line. They won't be in sync. As soon as we hit this COVID time, it became results-based work. And so our seeking systems came alive and we became more open to change. And I can go more in detail about the seeking system a little later on the call, maybe to like dangle that carrot for the crowd, because it looks like we've got a good group joining us, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I agree that that there's been this apprehensiveness towards change. And what I kind of recognized was this gap that was forming where, when I look back, it's easy to see this. Maybe in the moment you can't see it, but where the nature of work was changing at this rapid pace, right? So there's this incredible change that's happening here, but then workplace culture is changing at this slower pace. And then you're left with this gap. And in that gap is what you could potentially be doing versus what you were doing. And so you're operating here, but you had the potential to do so much more. And I think that's what I'm really excited about, is uncovering all the potential that's in that gap that we're now starting to explore when we think about all the new workplace tools we can use and the way we think about place right now.
And remember, the name of that gap, according to Aristotle, is arete. It's where stress and depression and anxiety live. So if we're not fulfilling what we're capable of doing and we're only doing the bare minimum, we're going to live in that sad little gap of depression, anxiety, and stress, which we could talk about mental well-being later on too.
Absolutely. Yeah, I know that's going to be a key part. So this shift in culture, one of the ways that, we talk about it is the idea that we've shifted from a culture that was focused on the brand versus culture being focused on the people. And that's a big shift. And we see it, this idea of biophilia. Molly, I know you've kind of gotten into biophilia in terms of how we bring it into our products. And I loved how you talk about where it goes too, and how it used to be in the lobby. I don't know if you want to kind of get into that a little bit.
Yeah, no, but exactly what you were saying. I think that the beauty in all of this is that, we're really starting to hone really deeply into the roots of what should have always been the driving factor of everything. And it's the people of the business. They are the greatest asset that every company carries. It's its people. And so why, this investment isn't, being made to create these environments and these spaces and these places to come that are so fulfilling to the people that are coming into them, that make them want to be there each day, that allow them to bring their whole self. And that goes, to this biophilic element. There's a lot of these different elements that come into play with it. But, that was the nature of it, right? You had it at the reception station, behind the, receptionist or wherever, that people would walk in and they get to see it. Oh, beautiful green wall. But what about the people that are actually having to work in that environment every day, that you walk up the stairs and all of a sudden they're in this stale environment with all these white walls and these big panels and this sea of sameness that's very cold and uninviting. And it's like, they're the ones that need, they're the ones that are having to sit there day in and day out, 8 hours a day, if not more. And the ones that need the natural light, that they need the biophilic elements, they need all of these different attributes to help them be their best self. And I think that it's so exciting to know that our world is starting to go, oh, well, they're the ones that actually need all of these elements to just really make them feel whole and allow them to be, the greatest asset that they can be.
Yeah, I
You
love
mean we
that
shouldn't
shift.
just be sad and lonely in a white cell, in a corner?
Hey, who knew?
That's so ridiculous.
Yeah, I love the shift in just thinking about, that the building, the colors, everything was, for the brand or for the company. It was a tribute to the company. And now it's thinking about it as a tribute to the people. And so, even if your brand is lime green and black, it doesn't mean that everything's lime green and black.
No.
You have to think about what is good for the people that are in that place.
Exactly. And the areas too, within that place, those colors mean so much, those textures, those colors, that the lighting, that means so much to the different spaces that you have too. It's not just like you said, you're not going to put, those colors everywhere. Well, when you have a focus space versus a collaborative space, you have to really think differently about that. And so it's really starting. I mean, I think workplace design is where it's always, been there. I think we're just getting really honed in and critical about, where we go in and kind of lay all of these applications out into space to make it the best functioning space for people, because color really does matter when you're working in a space.
Yeah, I agree. And I guess one of the things is and I don't know if this is a question we want to explore now, but how do we support culture building in a hybrid environment? Reagan, I'm sure you're getting asked that question.
It's interesting because I love how Molly was saying it's about the people, because at the end of the day, when COVID first came around, we were all kind of going, what is happening in our world, and everything. But companies kept going, they kept functioning, they kept succeeding because the people kept doing that. And so one of the things that I have worked heavily with companies on, and they're really exploring, is how do you now take the company values, for example, and create that more into the culture and integrate that in a way that people are living and breathing those values on more of a behavioral standpoint than just showcasing it, in the physical environment, and kind of creating a marriage between the two. How do you sort of create that within the culture of the people, but then also, reinforce that same behavior within the physical space? Because, as you mentioned, Molly, if you're saying you're this fun, innovative culture and you are creative and you're all these different things, but then people aren't getting their basic fundamental human needs met, if they're not having a workstation that sets, their ergonomic needs, that's basic, by the way. That's as basic, in my opinion, as breathing air. And then we get to the next part, which is more psychological safety, and it's more sense of belonging. And it's how do you create these inclusive environments that, quite frankly, you're going to have a lot of people that were hired into a company during the pandemic. That is kind of stressful to return to the office, and there's going to be this group of maybe, 20 to 30% of the people have never been in that space before, and they just don't feel connected and they don't feel like they belong. What can you do for those people? What can you do for the people that are going to stay remote but want to touch base in person maybe once a quarter or once a month or every 2 weeks? How do you let them feel included and like they belong? And the psychological part is definitely connected not only with the safety of, obviously, precautions and preparing for sanitization, but it's also more about if you go into a big open plan, there is this psychological thing that happens in your brain where you just kind of start to go inward more because you feel vulnerable and you feel completely exposed. And so if you don't give people an environment that they can kind of escape away and, or tuck away, or a place that people can have a more private conversation, you don't feel so exposed, or even at their specific environment, if they need to take a video call or different things they need to do, it's giving them that ability to not feel so exposed. And so those are things that companies are looking at, because one of the things we talk about is you can only memorize up to 150 to 220 names at any given time. So if you go into a corporate headquarters with 2,000 employees and you're going to different floors, it is overwhelming at best for an extrovert, and it is almost debilitating for an introvert. And so that is why, and a lot of people are also saying, I don't want to return. I'm quite comfortable working from home because it's not that intimidating. So how do you take that intimidation factor out of this kind of cold open space that was very efficient, but was it very effective? Were people able to be that level of innovation that we're asking them to be to fulfill the ultimate values of the company?
I think that's a great point. It's like return to awesome looks a little bit different for everybody. And so that's a key part to getting culture right. And it's kind of understanding the broad dynamic behind the word people. And when we say culture, how big that word is. And so that shift of, I just love the shift of thinking about color, thinking about the materials and the experience as not being so much brand oriented as it is oriented for the people. And I think that's kind of a shift that I love that I'm seeing right now. There's another shift out there that I'd like to kind of toss out and talk about. And this is a shift of sort of R&D. If you think about R&D as a manufacturer, right? So this is the world Molly lives in every day, right? We're designing products. Well, we're doing research and design. And I think there used to be an old notion that we would build the perfect product. We would design the perfect product. We'd hand it over and it was exactly the way you needed it. We designed the perfect space exactly the way you needed it. And I think that this shift we're seeing is R&D is now moving to the end user, where the office is less precious now. and we're saying, no, you know what? This last 2 years, this has been a preview potentially for the of the rest of our careers, really. I mean, we're, even if it's not COVID, I mean, we're going to be disrupted in so many ways. And so we need to start building an environment that can keep up with that sort of change. You know, I don't know, Molly, if you want to touch on some of the things that you're looking at with regards to the pace of change.
Well, yeah, and I'll touch on that too. But yeah, now I think for me and my role and what I get to do, that's the most exciting part of this whole thing is the change up, and us producing something and giving it to people and saying, hey, here's the perfect product, make this work. It's learning from behaviors and people and the needs, and then creating the products that solve for those problems and needs, and not making it, and it was reversed in a silly way. It was reversed, and all of a sudden it was like, hey, benching is what you guys need to be in. And so everybody comes out with a benching system. Everybody's supposed to fit into that. And that's what everybody's supposed to like and need. And it's like, hold on, let's strip it back. Let's get into the weeds a little more, get into the job functionalities, the people that are utilizing the space, the needs within those space, and then start to create real products that solve for, those needs. And it is no more of this, hey, everybody can fit this, you figure out how to make it work for you. And so now it's like, hey, we're going to make products that learn how to work for you. And I think that this kind of leads into what we try to think about on the product development side, and creating these products that fit, some of these different categories. And we do a lot with, human needs and the different types of products that you need within a day. But we've taken it kind of to a deeper level, where we've started to look at these, what we call these kind of shifts that take place within within the workplace. And so one would be what we call like a day 1, day 2, calling this a personal shift, and then this day 1, day 30, and then a day 1, day 365, organizational shift, neighborhood shift, and personal shift. And an organization can't be set up, with everything working as a personal shift. So when I talk about a personal shift, that means it's on casters. Very likely the user gets full control of the product, right? I get to decide where I want to be and how I want to be there. And I get to fully create my space. And that's a facilities nightmare. And nobody wants, an entire layout that's going to look like that. But it's important for certain job functions, for certain, people's needs, what they're coming in for, depending on, what that application might be. There are products that need to be able to function directly for that user in an on-demand type, situation. So we call that like a personal shift. And then there's the day 1, day 30, which we're looking at more of, where a lot of companies have teams that'll work together for maybe 30 days. And then they'll switch, and then they'll be working on another project with a different team. And so being able to create team-based applications that, maybe they aren't, all on casters where anybody can change them on any given moment, but that they're easily flexible. So, it's a kit of parts. They're not, connected into one another. You can still then easily adapt them. Maybe it's done during a day's time. Maybe it's done overnight. And then you come in and you can kind of change the layout as you need. And there's certain products that fit that application. Or if you see a department grow, taking certain applications and being able to just make some tweaks with the layout of the workstation, and be able to all of a sudden double your amount of people that can work in that space. Then there's this third shift, this day 1, day 365, more of an organizational shift. And I think that that's the one thing that we've learned the most about, what COVID's kind of taught us the most about. And hopefully, hope to God, we don't go through, what we are going through ever again. But it has taught us that we have to set ourselves up to be able to flex and change with the changes that are inevitable in our lives. And so creating spaces, we talk a lot about soft architecture at OFS. And so creating these product solutions. So instead of hard walls for everything, trying to utilize furniture, some of these soft architectural elements that can be moved, that can be adapted, that can be changed over time. And so organizational shift being, hey, I brought my people back. We got into the workplace. We knew going in, and we were transparent with our people that, hey, we're not going to get it right 100% out of the gate. We know that, but we want you to know that we know that, and we're going to work together, and we're going to figure out how to make this work. But we set it up. We set ourselves up to be able to adapt and change together. And so it's not making anybody feel forced into anything, because again, we all came back, or we're all going to be coming back from very different experiences, very different, past years and a half. And so I think being able to be empathetic to that and go, hey, you have as much play in this as we do, or as much say, and we're going to talk together, we're going to learn, we're going to evolve. together. And then day 1 to day 365, we say, hey, this isn't working. We can modify this. We can change this. Let's tweak this. And then when you set yourself up with products and applications that don't draw you into a space that completely lock you in, then you have those abilities to be adaptable. And I think that's one thing that we really try to talk about. A lot of products that we've been coming out with lately and what we're going to continue to do have that ability to become kind of structural, but they're soft in the sense that they can be adapted and changed as your needs shift and change as well.
That's so huge.
Long-winded. Long-winded.
No, that's exactly what, working in house with clients, that's what they're looking for is, because I think the old model of running out with the latest trend and everyone's creating that trend. So everyone's trying to fit that, square peg into the round hole. And yet we're all realizing that humans work in different ways. We have different work modalities that we prefer to, take on. Now with this new hybrid model that's coming into play, I can only imagine the changes, add shifts that are going to happen, because quite frankly, you could start off where a smaller percentage are going into this hybrid remote world, but maybe it expands, or maybe it's the other way around. And the one thing I've been telling clients all day long is whatever you do, the number one thing you have to do is plan to change, plan for flexibility, plan for your space to not be static. Because if you put in something that's, for example, built in, you can't work around that. You're stuck with that piece, and it's now you're working around another pole in your space. So I think that's so important for it to be more organic, based upon the fact that we have no idea what's coming still, right? Our world, if it's taught us one thing, is that to deal in the world of ambiguity is what we're going to have to do, and uncertainty. And so we have to become prepared to respond that way. And so I love that it's almost like a responsive type of a solution versus a static solution.
Yeah, I heard a great quote. Oh, not a quote. It was a statistic from the World Economic Forum, and it was around artificial intelligence. They published a report about 6 months ago or so, and it said that 40% of people felt that their job would become irrelevant in the next 5 years. That's a huge number. Okay,
Doug, it's true.
And so, and it's like, okay, well, the way I look at it is this: maybe instead of 40% of the jobs going away, maybe it's take every job, okay? Take your own. 40% of what you're doing right now in your job will not be relevant in 5 years. So it's a different way of looking at that stat.
Mm-hmm.
So now basically what you're saying is, every 10 years at that rate, you're turning over entirely, your entire job function changes. And so in 5 years, if half your job function changes, what are the implications that has on space? If your job becomes more creatively oriented versus data or input oriented, massive implications on space and what space should do and how it should support the kinds of work that we're doing. So interesting exploration. I want to move into another shift.
I want to say one thing, Doug. I actually presented at the Global Cornet Summit a couple years back, and it was called Man versus Machine, and how do we enhance our emotional intelligence during the age of AI? And I think that's the theme, because there are probably 100 stats that I found very similar to the one you found to back up the fact that the job functions that we're doing, if you think about what you're doing a year and a half ago, like you mentioned, a lot of things are irrelevant and they aren't, used in the same way. Well, machines will be taking on more mundane tasks. Why would you want to be the person entering that content into the data sheet all day long? What you would probably much prefer the creative approach and the more innovative job. And so it's so important. The easiest way to be innovative and creative is to bring minds together and to bring people together. And so I think that's another big shift why we're realizing people have to get back together in person for this innovation to happen, because Edison is the myth of the lone genius because there were about 14 people on his team. I don't think that he would have been churning out as many light bulb experiments working from home by himself.
That's pretty good.
True. That's good.
I know you've explored the nature of a lot of innovative collaborations, and so yes. I'm excited to hear. There's a lot of content I know that you're sitting on there, Reagan.
It's just all tucked away nicely.
There is a shift going on right now too. So there's this shift of us making, when I say us, manufacturers designers building you the perfect environment, walking away and saying you're good for 5 years, right? I mean, that's no longer the case, you know. All right, we got to shift around culture. There's another shift here around perspective, and I think there was an overdependence on outside perspective, and right now I feel like more than ever, everyone is looking in, and we're saying, "Wow, okay, I need to gain perspective from our people," and they're doing it. Are we asking all the right questions? That's another whole topic. Do we ask people what they need? Do we ask them what they want? Or is there a different question that we need to ask? But just in general, I think this shift of looking inward for answers versus looking outward for answers is a positive shift. And I think you still need outside influence to I think to weave it all together. Reagan, I want to, I'd love for you to touch on some of your thinking around that.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, because I mean, I definitely think one of the trends I've noticed is the evolution of micro teams that have sort of come to play during the last year and a half, where people are sort of shifting into their smaller subset teams and, doing their, asynchronous and synchronous work, and it's sort of not as exposed to the full group as a whole. So that's one area. So teams are looking inward, but then companies, as you mentioned as well, are choosing to look inward. And it's funny because a lot of leadership I've talked with over the years, their biggest fear is to ask questions about how things are. It's the truth of the matter, because what they don't realize though is that humans tell about 1,500 lies per year, and we tell about 6 lies a day. It's a great shirt, by the way, Doug. Just kidding. I actually love it because I'm wearing it too. And the number it's funny because it's not true. The number one lie people tell you is I'm fine. And so I always look at clients in the eye and say, okay, if your people are telling you they're fine, congratulations. They're probably already looking for another job. We've had this great resignation. So it's almost like what I feel I've been working with companies on is more like group therapy, where you have to look inside and you have to look like into your past and kind of right the wrongs and fix the things that were broken and the things that weren't working, and then start focusing on the positives and the things that are working. And I learned this from my dad, because he's the change management. He actually got his master's for change management in 97. And I remember, I was in high school and I was like, what is that? And he's like, well, imagine like if a client is trying to figure out what to do with their space. He's like, it's like the building's burning down and you have to run out really quick. You can grab 3 things that really work, and then you're going to leave everything else behind. And so it's sort of like, what can we just let burn to the ground? And that might be kind of a little bit not as sensitive to say these days. This was the 90s. We could get away with a little more, but, essentially the idea is, how do we build our foundation internally as a corporate culture, as a company? How do we build it from the ground up? I have to give kudos to Insidesource, for example, before even thinking about talking with other companies about returning to awesome, they did it themselves. They did a full change management. I got to help lead that charge with their teams. It was amazing. And they looked inward first. They saw what all the glitches were. They experienced the pain. And the most important piece about that as well is when you go through something like that, you then develop empathy for other people in their process, and you have your own stories. And so not only can you fix, what's going on internally within a corporation, but you can also maybe learn and can help you within your business. So there's so many great things for building this solid foundation that you can grow to hit that level of like human flourishing that people like to kind of aim towards.
The lies. This is interesting. Okay. Never heard these statistics.
It's true. Go look it up.
I recall
that wasn't a lie.
Yeah. There's an old cartoon. I recall. It's not a cartoon. It's like a cartoon picture. Okay. And it says there's 2 lines, there's 2 people, they're like lemonade stands. One has this huge line and one has nobody there. And the one that has the huge line is selling comforting lies, and the other one is selling unpleasant truths, right? and what it comes at, and I remember hearing a reporter speak, and she said, people lie for all kinds of reasons. That quote really stuck in my head. And when I interviewed a change management expert for Scotiabank. Hillary Green was her name, and she said, how do I hear what you're not telling me? Or how do I hear what you're not saying? And I almost feel like what you're describing, Reagan, is that they're like the next level of leadership that's going to be required to kind of move workplace and workforce in the direction we need to go. EQ, emotional intelligence has to be one of the most important traits that you're seeing out there right now.
Well, and another thing to think about, people might go, you might tell them what to do or not really ask them how they're feeling. They'll go, okay. And then they'll make that decision with their feet, right? They'll just go back and camp out at a desk if you try to shift them into some sort of a shared desking program. They'll just, continue to work from home and not come back. I mean, the reality is you can choose to not ask people's opinions. You can choose to not look inward. It's just the same thing as like, you can choose to not ask your spouse or your friend or if everything's okay. If you ignore it long enough, the interesting thing too about lies is it actually attacks our nervous system, where it's the point of like stress that releases and it's really intense. So people that are constantly having to tell those lies are stressed out beyond belief because they're constantly having to put up this front that is not a true, authentic human interaction or human engagement. So that's probably another huge reason why they're not enjoying coming to the office every day in the past, because they feel like they have to smile and say everything's fine. And what I love that's happened in our new age is that it's okay to not be okay. And that's a part that we have embraced. And it's like, it's okay to be human. There's people that are admitting that they've cried on conference calls, or they'll see like a child sitting on someone's lap during a call one day because they were home with, some sort of sickness or whatever. And it's like, the human aspect of us has come out in this EQ side of the empathy stronger than it's ever been. And I think that's so important.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree with that more. And I think that that's one of the other things that this past, year and a half, 2 years, whatever it's getting into now, has offered us, is because that level, like our vulnerability is higher, our empathy is higher. Now is the time that I think companies have that door open to go, okay, maybe it was uncomfortable for me to ask some of these questions before, but now is the time that I can. And we're all we've all been through something together. And I love, hearing that, this wasn't an organizational crisis that we went through, it was a human crisis. And so we're all in this as humans together. Why not open that door to really ask some of those raw, uncomfortable questions? It doesn't mean that you have to solve every problem that everyone brings to you. It doesn't mean that you have to, and I know it, I think that's why a lot of times it's avoid. Don't ask for opinions, because then you get 50 of them and then you don't know what to do with it. And it becomes, but honestly, I think the more that companies do lend an ear to hear and are transparent in their approach and say, hey, I can't guarantee that I can make every request happen, but I want to hear you. And then I want to come back and I want to tell you why we went with this, or this, and so all of a sudden, then I got to voice my opinion. Not necessarily did it happen, but I know it was heard. And then it was translated back to me on the why that we ended up implementing, X, Y, or Z. But it's just like we have such an opportunity right now. And I would hate for our industry to miss it, because it is like it's this opportunity to really, really set change and know that what you started with, Doug, too, is like there isn't a prescription base to this. The answers are found within. There is, anytime you're looking for somebody else anymore to tell you how to lay out your space or how your workplace should function, that's the worst question I think that you can ask, and it's natural to do it. Everybody's kind of searching for it out there, but the truth is all of that is right inside of you and your people. And that's what's going to build that culture too, right? And just continue to build and make a stronger foundation for the company. So it's super exciting.
Well, what I think I love about that too, Molly, is I love when I've been in workshops, so the executives say, okay, well, here's our issue, here's our dilemma, okay, we asked them, here's what they said, we got all this like feedback, what do we do now? And, quite frankly, I love turning the problem back over to the employees and having them be involved in solving for that problem. And so you put the problem into their hands versus saying, well, here's the problem, we tried to solve it this way. Let them get involved in that, because one, either they'll see there's really no other alternative, so they will adopt that change more openly, or two, they will innovate and come up with a really awesome idea and do something totally different that we didn't think about. And I've seen that happen so many times. And it's like the adoption to change is so much stronger when you allow the employees to be heard in so many more ways than just a survey or ask them how they're doing. It's like get their hands dirty, get them involved, you
Yes.
know?
I love that. I love that.
This plays right into shift number 4, which is
We plan that, Doug.
creating. Yeah, I mean, I keep it moving. I'm trying to keep us on
Yeah.
track. The shift towards a more empathetic workplace, and I think it certainly shows up in the planning of the place, planning of place, but also in the notion of like, I don't want to use the word policy exactly, but the trust that's being built in the environment and that sort of thing. I know mental health has been a major shift as well, and I'd love to kind of hear, Reagan, what you're thinking about when you hear empathy in the workplace now.
Well, yeah, and my whole career working, I didn't truly feel the pains of challenges in work until I became a mother. And after that happened for me, I think that my empathy for people that struggle in any way, shape, or form became so much stronger. Because I think the problem and the reason why sometimes as we age in our wise years, we struggle with youth is because youth hasn't truly struggled yet. They haven't felt maybe the pains that you do feel longer in life. And it's not just being a mother, something else could happen to you in your life that's a challenge. We're all human, as we said, and we're all going through something at any given point in time. Someone could have lost a grandparent, someone could have lost a dog. Someone could just have like renovations happening in their house, like I am right now. But you can't hear, so whatever, you don't know what's going on. It's like duck on water. But either way, it's understanding that everyone has something going on in their life at any given point in time, and you don't understand what that person may or may not be going through, especially during certain stressful times. And so empathy is the skill that you have to work on it. You have to actively try to think about the other person. And quite frankly, and unfortunately, empathy is very hard to build in a digital community. It's very hard because when we have these types of chats online and things, we rarely sit around and talk about our personal lives or our challenges or our issues. Or someone might hear you in person having a call with the contractor that's not going to show up the next day, so it's totally stressful for you. Then your coworker knows you're going through something. So this sort of empathy in person is something that we have lacked in the last year and a half. And so I think it's much easier to be cold over email or text or chat. It's much easier to be straight down to business and not truly thinking about the other people as the humans that we all are. And so thinking about that and creating more empathetic approach, as I mentioned, there's going to be an entire group of new hires coming in. And one client we talked about this with as a thought starter was, what if we created like a new hire hangout? What if we said, you can come into this space. This is your space. It belongs to all the new hire employees. And so it kind of lets them, one, form that bond, but then other people can have empathy to know, okay, if all these new hires got hired during the pandemic, that must have been really hard. And so they can come in and be mentors and cross share and, help educate those. And another option to think about is people that are remote, because they are going to feel excluded, and there's going to be some severe FOMO over the next few years as people work remote that aren't working in person. And there is this present bias that can happen, that you could just lean towards a person that's across from you. You end up having these side conversations after a meeting. You end up going out to lunch together. You end up going to events together, whatever you may do. You build a bond, and so you're going to have more empathy for that person. So it's having an understanding of that remote person. What kind of a space could you design for them if they were to stop into the office every once in a while, where they're it's known this person's a remote worker, I'm going to go say hi to them. Or that remote worker might have a space in that space that they could invite someone to their room, so they don't feel so excluded and sort of out of sorts. Or can you create an environment where it's a little bit more enclosed around them, that they feel more comfortable? These are things to start thinking about. And that is what I think of the empathetic office, is thinking about the different moods of people that are coming in and their different scenarios and planning for that.
I love some of those ideas. The idea of the new hire hangout or the remote worker hangout, whatever it might be, just helping place identify is really interesting to me. I know there's a movement towards understanding the neurodiverse workforce when it comes to place, and how empathy in the planning of space is also kind of coming through full steam, which is basically if I asked you to describe the typical person, how would you do that? Right? You really can't. It's
Oh, man.
impossible. It's just like describing the typical family. We're all
I mean,
weird,
I'm not
right?
one person, Doug. I have like 6 personalities, so we're in trouble. No, it's
Yeah.
true. And quite frankly, it's even harder when you have a culture that is very neurodiverse towards one spectrum, one type of personality, and they almost overthrow the environment. It could be an aggressive sales type environment. It could be more of a mechanical engineering type environment. It could be, something that's almost too soft for certain people. And so it's, having awareness that, again, even if there's only 20% of the people in that population that don't fit within that, how do we make that work for everyone? How do we make people feel, included within that?
It's
Right.
like what we talked about on the last webinar a little bit, but the dynamics of the Winnie the Pooh group and how that's the greatest team of all time, right? But it takes all of those different and allowing them their space, right? To bring that everything together to make it the greatest team of all time. You have to be able to create spaces just like that for all of those different, personality types, those differentiations that people have, those different emotions and feelings, and so that collective can be as great as it needs to be. Or as great
we
as
all have Eeyore days where we don't like, maybe we have to go to the office for a couple meetings in person, but is there a space that you can escape to where you don't get distracted because you just have to get work done, or you just kind of want to be left alone for the day? Maybe you were up all night with a 2-month-old and you're exhausted. You don't feel like putting on that authentic, inauthentic smile and saying you're fine. But also I would love to know, I think I envision that Doug is like Christopher Robin. I'm probably like Tigger. I don't know, Molly, who do you relate with the most?
I don't know. I feel like, honestly, I've gone through the personality chart of the entire cast, and I'm like, I can't. This is where it goes to that 6 people. Like, I'm like, I kind of feel like I'm all of them.
That is actually technically
really
they're all the relation. Yeah, it all depends on what mood you're in, right? Yeah.
I got a lot going on in here, Reagan.
Hey, I mean, come Labor Day, I'm gonna be Pooh Bear all day long at the barbecue. So eating my barbecue. Anyways, we digress, Doug. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
But we had to shift into something kind of crazy for a minute because hopefully people are still with us. My gosh, we haven't dropped anyone. That's amazing.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna change my background to Winnie the Pooh next time we're up here. So let's go to shift, because there's one more shift I want to explore before I see if there's some questions out there, and then I also want to make sure I give Kelly some time at the end for a little show and tell. So the last shift I have is really a shift in the expectation of the employee, right? This one, I don't want to say goes without saying, but it's pretty self-understood. We're seeing it, all forms of it, from a shift in, I want to call it power, right? But a shift in influence. And then we're also seeing a shift in just what an employee would expect from a work environment. And one of the greatest analogies I had kind of heard, this is from my boss, Ryan. He started relating workplace to being a consumer product. And so I'd love to kind of think, what does that mean when you hear that? Workplace is a consumer product.
Ooh. Do you want to take that first, Molly?
I mean, I'll take it. I think what he was.
What would you call it, Doug?
On the spot too much, right? Because it is a little bit vague. But I mean, it's the notion that, workplace used to be something that was prescribed. You had to do it, right? It was like,
yeah,
it was just one of those things that you had to do every day, just like putting on underwear or whatever else. And now that it's a choice just like a consumer product would be a choice. Does it bring me value? Does it make me happy? Am I interested in it? Does it capture my attention? All the things that you would think of if you're designing a product, a consumer product, you need to think of for your office now.
It makes me think of Daniel Pink's book, A Whole New Mind, where he talks about, in our world of like everything is looking the same, the designs are, it's like things are all starting to kind of like automation, autonomous parts, and then there's like everything's kind of competing that way in this consumer goods. And so he's basically saying it's the rise of the creative worker. And this came out like 15 years ago, and I was just enthralled by it. But he truly sort of embraces that. And I personally agree. I think that the workplace, it needs to challenge itself and to be more. It needs to have sort of a personality that draws people in, that lures them in, because what's going to motivate people, from an intrinsic desire to go versus extrinsic? Because extrinsic could be, if you don't come in, you're fired or whatever. Like that's a temporary solution. And someone will come in and they'll be unhappy and they'll probably quit anyways. They're just going to look for their job for the next 4 months. But, what are these things? I do love Dave Denny. I have to quote him. He always tries to create inspiring spaces and things that like get people's brains to think in new ways. And how do you kind of come into that environment that gets you, it draws you in versus like you walk in and you just feel a little sad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. There are always places that depress us and places that excite us. We all know them.
The workplace 100% has to work harder for its people. It's just again, there is choice right now. And it does go back to your point, Doug, about it being a consumer product. There's a lot of choice out there that I can work, in a lot of different, everybody, is hiring right now, but who's going to value me? Who's going to allow me to bring my whole self? Who's going to help me bring my whole self back? And especially with everything that we've been through again in the last couple of years, I want to know that I am going to go into a place that has my values set at the forefront of what they care about. They put this stuff on, on the wall of what their value sets are, what's important, but is that really being carried out? And do I really feel that when I come in, and that I am, a part of that? And I do get to, I do get to come into a workplace that takes care of me. It's where you have to spend. I mean, we spend so much time at the, in and out of the office and with those people. Why? And I go back to the very first thing I said in the very beginning, that we all know is that the people are the greatest asset that the company has. You're not a company without that glue of your people. And so investing in a better tomorrow for them is the best thing that an organization can do. I mean, that's what's going to fuel the fire, that's going to create a better business continuity, going to create a better overall business, between strategy and implication and everything else that goes into it. I think that if we don't, really start to create workplaces and work really hard at creating workplaces that value, our employees, we're going to miss the boat.
I agree, Molly. Very well said. There's been some neat comments. There's one from 3Form's Jen Ruckel. We are no longer designing the environments, we're designing the experience.
Yeah,
so I love that comment. If there's any questions, now's a great time to pop them in the chat. I want to make sure we leave a few minutes to do that. In the meantime, I'm actually going to bring someone else up onto the stage. Oh yeah, Jen Ruckel said Kay said that, not me. So she was quoting a quote from
Kay Sargent with HOK. We love her.
Yeah, yes, we do. She was quoting a little something from the latest Imagine a Place podcast that was out there. So so Jen was a guest. Reagan was a guest on that podcast also. You'll have to dig back, maybe like episode 10 for Reagan or so.
I know. I was like one of your first, not the first, but
still a fantastic episode that I still get comments on today.
Fun.
Yeah.
I mean,
absolutely.
that was like right in the heat of when COVID first hit and we were all losing our dang minds. So I can only imagine what I was actually saying on that call.
It was, I mean, really so much is so relevant yet today. It was really, really an insightful interview. And then, so Kay was actually just on this Monday. All right. Doesn't look like there's any new questions out there right now. I'm going to bring Kelly up on stage here really quick.
Our special guest.
See. Yes. All right. Hang on.
Oh, and while you're doing that, I'll talk about the shirts. Do we want to announce that, or are we gonna do that at the end?
Let's talk about the shirts. I'll actually have Kelly share a little bit about the shirts too. And just so you know, Kelly is the creative strategy director at Insidesource, and she is hanging out at Insidesource headquarters right now. So Kelly, I'll hand it over to you.
And I got the memo on the t-shirt, so that's exciting. My background is different than everyone else's, but I do have the t-shirt on. Thank you, Doug. I've been giggling behind the scenes this entire time. So thank you for the wonderful conversation. As Doug mentioned, I'm the creative strategy director with Insidesource, and I'm here in our San Francisco office right now, and wanted to just chat a little bit about that and share this with the group. This was one of my first projects that I did with Insidesource when I joined the team. So it's actually a space that is near and dear to my heart. And part of the reason is really exactly what you guys are talking about. For me, it was a discovery process to understand more about Insidesource as a team, to really understand our culture, and to use this as an opportunity to celebrate that. So what I'm showing very specifically in the background right now, as you may have noticed, is the OFS Obeya product. I'm actually going to.
What? How'd that get in there? Oh my gosh! What a coincidence!
Poof,
We know that's on the call.
It magically appeared. What's really special and unique about this is that for us, when we were looking at this space, part of the objective was to create connectivity, but also transparency, and really, again, celebrate who we are as Insidesource. So the design intent here, and it's just a little sneak peek into a tour that I would love to share with everyone. The design intent here is that this is our grown-up treehouse. So for us, that means we're growing up without growing old. We understand that this is about our people, and as we grow up, we really want to stay true to who we are and true to our roots. And products like this honestly gave us the opportunity to honor that. We are in a historic property here, so it also was a problem solver for us. As you can see, it goes all the way back. So it's actually carrying power from the column all the way about 26 feet into this open area that you're greeted with when you walk into our space. So it was a really, really wonderful way for us to divide space, again, create transparency and connection for our own team, and support productivity because it carries power. I definitely just want to say to all of you on the screen right now that this has been absolutely wonderful. I love being a part of this team. I believe in this movement of return to office. I love the opportunity to learn from each other, and to me, you're thought leaders. And what I love the most is that you're positivity reinforcers, and I'm thrilled to be up here with you.
Oh. See, this is
thanks,
why
Kelly.
virtual is not fun. I want to give you a big hug right now, Kelly. You were so cute. Like, seriously. And then go out for a glass of wine.
I know. Big
I'm in.
Yeah.
Kelly, I mean, the treehouse,
I
absolutely love.
So cute.
I love that description, especially like if I think about treehouses, right? And I think about the kinds of conversations that happen in a treehouse, the kinds of energy that happens. I mean, it's like
exactly.
you're more creative, right? You drop this sense of work robot, kind of thing going on. And I was even thinking like some of the best meeting, like the best possible meeting you could be in is that meeting where you can turn to your boss and say, that idea sucks, right? I mean, that can only happen in a treehouse.
Yeah.
And so I mean, the
Yeah.
physical environment absolutely plays a role in creating that sort of energy. And I love what you guys did there in the showroom. And yeah, that's how you can get a t-shirt, right? I know you've got a bunch of these in the showroom. So if you come and you visit Insidesource, you'll get a chance to get one of these Return to Awesome t-shirts.
Absolutely.
That's
And
right.
this is just a sneak peek. We have a whole space and a lot more to share. There's a bigger story and a lot more to share behind that. So we'd love to have people come visit. Thank you everyone for joining today as well. This has been such a great group.
Well, and I just have
Awesome.
to say, it's so important that we just all remember, because everyone's been talking about this return to office and everything. And I think the reason we came up with this saying is because if we return to things as they were, and if we don't take on this mindset of like a treehouse or, kind of this flexible environment or, working towards the people are either not going to be, enticed to return, they might not be as engaged when they do. So like, these are some of the great concepts to return to awesome. I just love it. And so excited. Go get your t-shirt. I know I've got mine.
Awesome.
Reagan and I are be talking about that right there, right in that little.
That's right. That's right.
Well, thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Molly. Thank you, Reagan. And thank you all for hanging around with us today. Everybody that had a chance to watch. Again, this will be out on video, so you'll have a chance to catch this later if you missed any of it.
And thank you, Doug. You did a great job,
Yes,
Christopher
thanks,
Robin.
Doug.
Always.
Thanks, Megan. Thanks, Kelly.
My pleasure. Okay, take care, everyone.